what happens in a reducing interest rate environment, which we're at 19% and we reduced, and what happens in a higher tax rate environment is completely different than what happens and how we should act and save and plan with our money in a low interest rate environment with a low tax rate environment. Completely different ballgame, yet over the years, we slowly made this transition and very few people adapted, right? Very few people look at the rules of the game. Because remember, money here, it's just a game. And if you don't know the rules of the game and how money works and the different factors and variables that play into the money game, you're not going to be able to make good decisions. Hey, what's going on, Cashflow hackers? It's Chris with Life 180. And for this video, I want to talk to you about, is a Roth IRA or a 401k the best place to save for retirement? Now, I talk to people every single day that, obviously have money in 401ks, IRAs, qualified accounts, the Roth IRAs, Roth 401ks, 457s, TSP accounts, like all these different types of qualified accounts. And ultimately the most common are the 401ks and the Roth IRAs. It's just the one that the most people know about. There are more 401k plans administered with companies than any other. IRAs are probably right behind that. But here's the bottom line. When I get asked if those types of accounts are good retirement vehicles, my answer is an unequivocal no. I've actually done an entire series called the 10 perils of your 401k, and I have a playlist on it, and I'll actually put the link up here. I would really encourage everybody to spend some time and watch that playlist, because it really goes through the 10 perils, the risks associated with putting your money in a 401k. I mean, think about it this way. And I'm going to get into the 401k here first, and then I'll talk about the Roth IRA. So think about it this way from a 401k perspective. When 401ks were created, by the way, I'm 41, I was born in 1980. 401ks didn't really start going into real use until 1981. So the idea of a 401k is younger than me. So my parents, my mom was 20 when she had me, so she was a young mother. My dad was 24. My parents are the perfect example of people who worked their entire career and leaned on 401ks, right? Pension plans were starting to get reduced, and people were starting to lean more on 401ks. A lot of people look at the booming 80s, right? And they go, whoa, how did the stock market do so well? Well, it's because before 1981, very few people had the wherewithal, the sophistication, the experience, expertise to be able to invest in the stock market or mutual funds. They just didn't do it. People didn't do it. They kept their money in other places, right? And so from 1981 on, remember, there's a couple factors that happened. In 1980, Paul Volcker jacked the federal funds rate up. Interest rates went through the roof. Mortgage rates went high. Variable interest rates went through the roof. The market came crashing down. Inflation was out of control, so it came tumbling down. And so we had a lot of things going on in the economy. And so there was like a reset right at the beginning of 1980. And then all at the same time, these 401ks, these qualified plans went into implementation. And so then it took the average everyday investor and it put them into the markets. And so now when you had the stock market, let's just call it Wall Street, you had Wall Street that had a small fraction of American citizens participating in investing in it. Now all of a sudden, more and more people over the next decade just flooded in to becoming investors. So that poured more money into the stock market. So that just drove prices up because of supply and demand, and that's just the way it goes. And so that's what caused the booming 80s. Now, when we think about it like principally and mathematically, if you look and understand tax rates and where we were back at the time, our national debt was much, much lower. It wasn't even $1 trillion. I think it was like a couple $100 billion. So it was really, really low, comparatively speaking today. And people were freaking out at the level of debt back then, right? I guess people are going to freak out about the level of debt we have until we just default on it, I guess, is how we're going at this point in time. But people were freaking out about the debt, but tax rates were high. Right, the marginal rate I think was like 37.5% back then, and so if you were in a situation when 401ks first came out and you had the opportunity to defer taxes, right? Because remember, you're not getting a tax deduction. That's my biggest problem that I have with CPAs and tax preparers enrolled agents, anybody who's kind of doing that sort of thing, is if they don't understand the concept of a deferral versus a deduction. Now, most of the time, they know it's a deferral. They talk about it like it's a deduction because all they're thinking is myopically about how do we lower your tax liability this year, because people are too short-term focused on what's going on this year. The reality is we need to be thinking about, I don't care if I get you a tax deduction this year. What I care about is reducing your tax liability throughout your life, throughout your career, right? That's what we should be thinking about, because that's efficiency. If we could look back in 1981 and you could defer $10,000 of income and put it into a 401k when taxes were 37%, let's just say, and you could now retire when taxes are 25%, if you were in that bracket, now you save 12.5% taxes. That makes sense. But now, at this point in time, the variables in the economy have changed. Taxes have gone up, or taxes have come down, I should say. Debt has gone up, and we're in an environment, interest rates are at all-time lows, and so the environment is saying that what happens in a reducing interest rate environment, which we're at 19% and we reduced, and what happens in a higher tax rate environment is completely different than what happens and how we should act and save and plan with our money in a low interest rate environment with a low tax rate environment. Completely different ballgame, yet over the years, we slowly made this transition and very few people adapted, right? Very few people look at the rules of the game. Because remember, money here, it's just a game. And if you don't know the rules of the game and how money works and the different factors and variables that play into the money game, you're not going to be able to make good decisions. So I would say that when it comes to 401ks, at this point in time, they're not good. So my general rule of thumb is that if you have access to a 401k and your employer, and you're not a self-owned company, if you work for somebody else and that person is contributing to your 401k for you, and they're willing to match you, let's say they're willing to match 3% of your income, up to 3% of your income, you should be contributing to whatever you need to contribute to get that match, right? Anything above that is inefficient, because yes, all the things I just talked about before are absolutely true, but if you know you could put money in and get the match, well, that's the equivalent of 100% rate of return, right? So that enables you the power to give up control of the money and to take on some more risks and variables. And it's not necessarily in alignment with all the infinite banking concept stuff and Austrian economic stuff that I talk about, but the bottom line is I think the benefit of getting that match from your employer is well worth it. Anything above and beyond that is way inefficient, and you should not put it there. And that is what it is. That's just kind of how I feel. Now, when it comes to a Roth IRA, obviously that's a lot better. The challenge with the Roth IRA is kind of twofold. A, there are limitations on how much money you can contribute. So that's one thing to consider. There are also limitations on who can contribute. If you make too much income, you're not even allowed to participate at all. They don't want to give you the benefit. And so, if you're a higher net worth person, if you're really successful, as a family, as a husband, wife combo, or just as an individual earner, there's a high likelihood you're not going to be able to even participate in a 401k. So what do you do if you can't access a Roth IRA? I'm sorry. There's a good chance that you won't be able to participate in a Roth IRA. So the question is, what do you do? And when it comes to the Roth IRA, as far as risks go, don't forget, we still live in an environment where we're at the back end of a bull market, right? We've been in the longest bull market since the Great Depression, and I'm a big believer that we're in, I guess we're in what I consider to be going into a bit of a winter cycle, right? I'm really big on reading. I would really encourage everybody to read Harry Dent's book called The Demographic Cliff. I read that back in 2014 or 15, and it is fascinating and super scary all at the same time. But I think it's important that you need to understand these things if you're going to be able to make good, solid, financial decisions, right? And so with a Roth IRA, you just have to understand that, yes, you have the tax advantages. You're putting money in post-tax dollars, and so it's going to grow tax deferred and you're going to gain tax-free access. There are some limitations to it. I'm not going to get into all the details about that in this video, but the bottom line is that you have to understand that you're taking on a lot of market risk. So from a retirement income perspective, putting your money in a Roth IRA, there's something called sequence of return risk. Like if you are in your mid 50s, upper 50s, lower 60s, and you're looking at utilizing, or you have a lot of money in a Roth IRA, I would implore you to think and study about what we call sequence of return risk, meaning it's not about how much money you have, it's about what you need that money to do for you and the risks associated with, we know we live in these boom bust cycles. The market goes up for 10 years or 8 to 10 years slowly and then comes down pretty violently. And then it goes up again and down. And that's a boom cycle, bust cycle, boom cycle, bust cycle, right? So we know that those things happen. And so what happens is if you kind of work and then you retire right before a bust cycle, that can completely derail your entire retirement plan, right? And so that is one of the biggest reasons that I think Roth IRAs are just not good, because you're taking on that market risk. If you don't understand what your sequence of return risk is in association with your market risk, then you're in over your head, I guess is the best way I could put it. You know, you're taking on too much risk. So the question is, what is the best alternative? I don't know that there is a best. I think it's important for everybody to do their own research, do their own due diligence. I can tell you what I consider to be really effective for me, for the people that I coach, for the people that I know who are extremely successful and do this to get predictable results, which you can't do inside of a 401k or a Roth IRA. There's no way you can get predictable results because there are too many variables outside of your control, right? And so what I love is utilizing a whole life insurance policy, which if you've watched this channel, I'm sure that's not going to be a surprise to you. Utilizing a properly designed whole life insurance policy, storing value, using that as your storage vehicle for your capital, and then turning around and leveraging it with turnkey cash flow real estate, right? And when you do that, if you haven't seen it, I've got a lot of videos on the channel with a guy named Mike Wolf. Mike Wolf is amazing. Like he's been a real estate investor for 32 years. He owns a lot of doors. I'm not going to give the number here because I don't know if he wants me to, but he owns a lot of single family homes himself, and he's helped thousands of people get into turnkey real estate investment properties where it's completely passive. It cash flows right out of the gate. And the beautiful part about turnkey real estate is that it's all about cash flow. So when you compare real estate, let's compare real estate to, let's say, a stock, a dividend paying stock. So if I have real estate, let's just take these two assets, and let's say you have a $200,000 real estate property, and let's say you have $200,000 in a stock that's paying a 5% dividend. So let's assume, just for the round numbers, that this real estate is performing at a 6% or a 5% to match the dividend, 5% cash on cash return, right? So if that's the case, and we know it's going to give a 5% cash on cash return, and you have a 5% dividend, what happens when 2008 happens and the market goes down 50%? Well, guess what? In the stock, what happens is you go down to $100,000, and that dividend, because it's 5%, is tied to the value of the stock. Check it out. You go from a $10,000 dividend to a $5,000 dividend. Your dividend gets cut in half. But in real estate, that house goes down in value. But in times of hardship, here's the fascinating thing about real estate, is in most markets, and if you buy in the right markets and you buy in the path of progress and you do it the right way in the right system with the right group and the right property management company, and you follow Mike's advice specifically. I can't speak to other people. I'm sure other people are doing it well, but I know Mike is doing it extremely well, and he's got the background, the history, and the success to prove it. When you do it that way, he shares a story that in 2008, he lost his net worth. He lost about 50%, actually more than 50% of his net worth, but his cash flow never changed, right? So look at it this way. If we think about the $200,000 as a 5% dividend, right? It's cash flowing 5%. What happens is if that house goes down to $100,000, the cash flow doesn't change. So if you compare it to a dividend, the dividend doubles. It goes from 5% to 10% because it doesn't change, right? So that life isn't about your net worth, life is about cash flow. And it's important to understand that. So especially when it comes to retirement income, that is a big reason why I love leveraging whole life insurance attached with cash flow real estate, because you have that stability from a cash flow perspective and you get all the tax benefits that go along with it, which is just a double bonus, which allows you to enjoy life more along the way, right? Like, and when you, the great news, I'm telling you, this is one of the things in the book that we have coming out, Cashflow Hacking, it's coming out in a couple weeks. One of the things that I always tell people about is the fact that if you just implement this, you can, no matter where you are, no matter what you're starting with, no matter what your level of expertise, no matter how old you are, I call it the retirement rescue plan, because I know I've talked to so many people between the age of 50, 55, 60 who are not where they need to be, who have lost hope, who don't feel like they have enough time on their side to get to where they want to go. They feel like they're going to have to work longer and all these different things. And so I'm telling you, anybody can do this, no matter where you are, with grit, determination, the right plan, and the right execution, the right coaching. Anybody can get to the point where they can retire in about 10 to 12 years or even less, depending on where you're starting. So I'm telling you, what I just told you about whole life insurance, attached and leveraging whole life insurance to capitalize and invest in turnkey cash flow real estate through the right system, is the #1 way to create the best, fastest, most secure retirement, guaranteeing the best cash flow, the best tax advantages, and ultimately it'll be the best legacy that you can pass on to the next generations as well. So because of all the tax benefits that goes along with passing real estate, the step up in cost basis, the life insurance that goes along with it. There's so many different things. We do another video on that. I'm not going to get into that right here. But that is that for this video. When I talk about what is the best place to save for retirement, it is never a 401k, never a Roth IRA. And quite frankly, saving inside of a whole life policy is not the vehicle that is going to create the magic in your retirement. It's the real estate. But when you tie them together, it becomes magic. So I hope you found value in that. If you did, smash that like button, hit the subscription button, click that bell if you found value in this, because I'm going to be doing a ton of videos on this. I can't wait to share it with you. If you have any questions, any comments, leave them in the comment section below. And until next video, have a blessed, inspirational day, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.